everyone, it is me, Corrie Sommers, your local Los Angeles realtor. Today we are going to have a discussion with an amazing gentleman. Some of you have seen this video with me in the past, Robert Feldman, who owns an insurance company. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges that people are facing that have been affected by the fires, as well as things that you as a homeowner can do to really kind of protect them and help position your property for better coverage. Stay tuned because I feel like this is an important topic. This is outside of, and it's outside of the 5 steps I've already shared and done, which by the way, all came from him. He gave some great recommendations to our office. There was a couple of webinars and meetings just really going over the most important things to communicate to our clients. And so today we're just gonna do a deeper dive. So grab a piece of paper, notebook, whatever to take some notes. You're going to want to do that and we will be right back. Hi everyone, it's me, Corrie Sommers, your local Los Angeles realtor, and today I'm here with Robert Feldman. Robert owns an insurance company, Wiles Insurance, but has been working in the insurance industry for quite a long time.
26 years.
26 years. So he has lots and lots of experience, has worked for other companies such as Allstate in the past, and at one point, I believe when we first met, you were one of the few reps that I could send my clients to for fire coverage when they were buying something that was in an area that was a little bit more at risk or a high severity fire zone, whereas others were just running into brick walls. We also, Robert has been amazing, not just helping my brokerage and agents being educated on steps to move forward from fire, which has helped a lot of people that have been affected in the Pacific Palisades fires as well as the Eaton fires, but has been a part of many webinars, just going over things. And if you've watched my 5 steps, critical steps to recovery, all of that came from Robert because he knows what he's talking about. So today, what I wanted to get in was kind of like some of those small little details that are outside of that, and some of the challenges that you're seeing, because now that people are moving forward and filing claims with their insurance companies and starting to, maybe get some checks cut, talk about what's being cut first and where you're seeing some holes, like people not being able to maximize their policies.
Absolutely. So obviously these fires were horrific. My experience is 26 years now in every major fire in California. 2 years ago, we are a wholesaler, so we have 3,000 insurance brokers bringing different programs. We've been very happy about the programs we're bringing in, but really been working with consumers just to help in general. This last weekend, I was actually in Pasadena working with a lot of the Eaton victims, just talking about steps that you've seen online right now, just what Corrie, you were able to bring to the market, which is so very important. Right now, it's kind of like this, everyone's in kind of step 3. So step 1 was filing a claim, and 2 was, obviously certifying a total loss. Everyone's really into step 3, that long-term housing is now occurring and people are starting to get adjusted. And that leads to the next, really the last 2 steps, which is hiring an architect and hiring a builder to start to do the rebuild plans. Both of these are very important, and as I stress to everybody out there, making sure the number one mistake I see to everyone out there is when they hire an architect independent of a builder. There's too many revisions. I think things go back and forth. It costs and it drains the potential budget for rebuilding the home. So really making sure you kind of hire your architect and your builder at the same time. It's really important. With that said, there's a lot of confusion going on right now. Those that lost their homes, structures, they're receiving checks, and they're called 2-party checks. Consumers, what that means is you had a mortgage. The mortgage company has the right to make sure you don't go and have fun and bet it on black in Las Vegas.
Right, they want their money.
They want to make sure they have their money secured to rebuild this asset. So it's really important to know that the steps and really moving the progress. As I talk to consumers all the time that are not even clients, I've helped hundreds of consumers just get to the right steps. It's really important to get involved with the architect builder. There are a lot of great builders that are out there right now that even have architectural groups that are part of them. Really get involved, get actively involved in the rebuild process. It's easy to kind of get into a rut, in my opinion. You get into a long-term housing, you're kind of sitting there and saying, "I'll deal with it tomorrow." I hate to sound terrible. Tomorrow is not a good answer. It's really important to keep stepping forward and making sure you're really pushing the process. The architectural plans can take weeks to months to get done. at the best case scenario. And really, you want to be the first in the door when you're doing the building permits, not the last one in the door. Is my recommendation. So everyone that we've dealt with that were clients directly that we're dealing with total losses, we have helped them exponentially speed up the process, receive the benefits of the policies, and just really kind of make sure they're into the architects. Almost everyone that we deal with already has an architect builder, and they're in that process. So if you're not at that point, it's time to step on the gas pedal and get moving.
Yeah, and something you just said, I want to segue or dive a little deeper into it, because the architect component and having an architect with a builder together.
Absolutely.
And so there was an article like right after the fires about an architect out of Santa Monica whose couple of his projects, like about 5 homes, did not burn. And he was talking about a lot of the things that he does design wise to mitigate and have integrated in his design fire resistant, which I think is pretty cool and pretty amazing.
Yep.
One of the developers, builder, who builds very beautiful modern homes both on the west side and has built in the Palisades and builds here in the Valley, the Osmond brothers, they are a full shop. They have on staff their architect, their project manager, everything. And I just showed one of their properties the other day, and they already have 24 requests for the Palisades. And I was like, wow, the Palisades is about to be all like their designs, right? Because they have that full shop. And I'm sure there's others out there, and as agents, we deal with a lot of builders, and we can recommend some people, and builders can recommend architects. But I think what you said is key. The ones that really work together.
You don't hire one without the other.
Yeah.
So if you have an architect you really like, great. I would say, great, give me 3 builders you work with in an interview. If you have a builder you love, great. Let me know who your architect is.
Right.
I want to know, because they have to be able to work together. It really eats up costs. Where the pot to rebuild is if you're spending money on revisions. I mean, it's going to be expensive enough. I had one architect just recently try to tell me that he bids it based on percentage of the total rebuild, and I went, that doesn't make any sense to me. So there's a lot of different variations out there. You just got to stay on it and really stay forward, working with. And then the really battle will come in the next phase will be, for a lot of consumers, is really once the process going, it's important about insurance, which insurance policies will do what's called a course of construction, which ones will do, like example, Allstate will do an endorsement that will do for the existing Allstate policies. Some companies won't, and it's going to be interesting as we get moving forward. So we keep continuing to bring capacity. We've launched multiple carriers within the last month. We were pretty excited to have ours that's now doing it. And there's a lot of changes. But to your point, though, Corrie, about the fire hardening portion,
a lot of it,
I'll tell you, a lot of it is actually by code now. So one of the big examples is homes that were built 2011 or younger are required to have tempered glass now. So it's not even a double pane window, it's tempered glass. There's no more eaves. Like we talk about open exposed eaves, those are gone. You're not going to see it. Well, it's more in Northern California for a wood shake roof or things of that nature, but these are things that are automatically fire hardening. But any architect that does the design to really aggressively defend, that's going to be the next really. My expertise is obviously as a wholesaler, we bring in insurance carriers. I work with London. I was on with London this morning in an early meeting, and really what the next battle is going to be for everyone out there for insurance is going to be, are you fire hardened? And not just the basic that CAL FIRE wants. They're going to want to see more. Do you have an annual mitigation plan? Is your house, did it have a proper insurance inspection? Especially when you're over 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. So, as you get larger homes, they're going to require these 3 things. Some carriers will do without, but you and I have always joked around about that. I really get upset about, I call it backwards underwriting. You'll have an insurance company that will bind a policy and then within 45 days cancel it.
Yeah, and that
just makes me nuts. So we at Wiles are right now successfully changing that. Our programs and all the carriers we work with as a wholesaler, we wholesale for, are requiring a lot of the mitigation, everything up front prior to binding, which is what's recommended. So it's going to become a bigger and bigger part. That is the direction the industry is going at this point. So that's why I'm thrilled to be on with here today, because it's like we got to get the word out. All your brothers and sisters as realtors need to hear this, and consumers alike. Yeah. This is the direction. It's no longer a guesswork anymore.
And along those lines, something that we had spoken about like 2 weeks ago, when homes are in a high severity fire zone, and insurance in general, right? what can a home seller do, or even a buyer once they have the property, to make sure that they're always, I don't want to say protected, but getting the best insurance that they could get.
Absolutely.
So, and you had mentioned something about if you're selling, getting ahead of it,
Yep.
having a fire hardening report out. Who does that?
Well, there are different companies that are out there right now. We're working with several different companies. It depends on where you are in California or the Western United States. There are different companies that are out there that are doing it. I hate to say it, it is a new vogue thing. So now we're seeing a lot, since the fires, we've seen a ton of companies that are popping up brand new that are, trying to do the, fire mitigation stuff or fire hardening. So we do kind of vet a lot of the different ones. We have a couple that we like and like a lot. There's everything from making sure your eaves are closed to, your vents are properly closed, making sure that you're very aggressive in it. There are companies that are incredible companies that do treatments on the house that make sure that they can spray every September, October before we go into fire season, that are very reasonable for a lot of consumers to come out. An example, one of the companies, a lot of the homes that are still standing in the Palisades are based on the treatment of one of these companies. So that's kind of it's an interesting scenario here, is because I don't care how great the insurance is, and I've said this to people, and I think there are a lot of great insurance companies out there. When you lose your home, you lose everything.
Right.
So I mean, I'm wearing a jacket. So right now, Corrie, I hate to say that if I lost my home.
This is all I have. It's not my favorite outfit or anything.
This is gone.
So again, all those great items, fire hardening can come out, a company that preferably is vetted by you or an insurance company, not just going online and Googling for the best fire hardening, because there's just too many newbies popping up.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what my biggest concern is for a lot of consumers.
And you also mentioned something interesting too about some of the homes that remained and didn't burn down. Obviously, the best situation in a fire is for you not to lose your home, for your home not to burn. Even if the services in the area are destroyed and it takes a while to come back, you don't want to lose everything. And there was one company, someone was mentioning to me that they were doing some research on how to protect their property better, and they came across this company that when there's an alert within so many I want to say miles or feet, that the system releases kind of like this foaming spray onto the house, so that once the fire approaches, the house is protected.
Yep, I've seen everything from that to one company that actually has, very similar to what you see in the Middle East right now with Israel, Iron Dome. It has a spray approach that puts a mist up and it takes out all the ambers out of the sky. And I mean, there's a lot of things. This is going to be the next generation of how we defend. Really, when you think about a fire, there's really three parts that needs to be involved. You have consumer involvement, you have insurance company involvement, and then you have regulatory involvement. Well, the regulatory involvement is going to be here or there. We can't get into it. Different states will be different things. But both consumer involvement and the insurance involvement is going to be really the key things of keeping insurance really available in California. And so we've been successful, as I mentioned, bringing a couple of different carriers in. We were really aggressively trying to bring in more because as companies are leaving, we're trying to fill the holes of it's really going on right now. And we continue to do that very thing, but it's still pretty out there. So it's definitely crazy.
It is crazy. And like, I have a client who I sold a horse property to out in Santa Clarita, Canyon Country area, and she's like, I'm meeting with someone, we're gonna make my property totally resistant, because I realized, there was the fires a couple years ago and it came close. She's like, we're on our own. Fire trucks can't get to us. We have to defend our land. So we're building an irrigation system, and I've got this guy involved, and so she's super excited because for her, it's about protecting and defending that property. She's got horses, she's got dogs, she's got, a house, a barn, you name it. She doesn't want, this is what she's worked so hard her entire life to reach. She doesn't want to lose it. And while firefighters are very important, my grandfather was a firefighter, and what they do is both heroic and so important, they can't be everywhere. And when something like what happened in the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, it was almost impossible. I was communicating a lot with one of the firefighters, and he was like at some point, something we both saw, he goes, what can we even do?
There's nothing we can do. And so what happens is that's actually what we would classify as a mitigation plan. What is the plan? So is it a treatment on your property? Did you do all the things through fire hardening to give yourself the best defensibility? Is your house upgraded with windows? Believe it or not, windows and eaves are the two top things Because if your windows are the old windows, if your house is from the 70s and 80s and they have the original windows, you're not going to survive a fire. If the heat gets up, the windows really almost explode, and it gets into the house, and the house goes. Where if you have people think the devil pane windows. I go, no, it's now the tempered glass. All the windows by code are now tempered glass, and that's so important. Eaves being closed, no vegetation within 5 feet of the house. These are all things that there's trees and different things that you're going to have to mitigate and really get moving. There's going to be a lot of regulatory problems in some areas of California. You can't touch trees. You can't touch another tree.
Certain trees.
And so what happens is it's going to be a really interesting thing, because there's going to be some consideration going back and forth, because okay, if you don't mitigate and remove the tree further away from the house, then the insurance companies aren't going to do it, or they're going to do it for 5 times the cost. And so it gets to be a really scary thing. There's going to be a balancing act, is what we'd say.
And you mentioned something too that I think is important, because I've seen this time and time again. Vegetation, plants, shrubs, ends up getting close to a house. And when you're talking 5 feet, that's,
that's nothing.
That's how tall I am, basically. Yeah. I mean, that's a big distance. And just about every home in America has some sort of trees, shrubs, plants, flowers that are more than 2 feet. Or less than 2 feet to a home. And I think about my mother's property. Her shrubs, the end of them might be at 4 feet, but where they stop close to the home, that's only about 1.5 feet.
Yeah.
And so the way homes and people are
designed, it's going to be changing.
Yeah. The
pots. I tell consumers all the time, you have beautiful, you have plants in pots. Why? Because a pot can be moved. Yeah. So if you have things in pots, I mean, it sounds crazy, but if a fire is coming in your direction, you can move the pots away from the house. You can make it defensible for your house. You just can't have a fuel line. That's the thing. Fires are, we're not going to be able to change wind. Wind is wind. The winds we had for the Palisades fires and the fires, I mean, there was some gusts that has much than can't defend against that. What you can defend against, though, is what catches fire. Do you have your house serviced in a way annually to make sure that there's no issues regarding, going forward? Like one of the companies I like is Komodo. They're an incredible company that does orange-based, peel-based stuff, not like Phos-Chek. Very good for the environment stuff. But at the same time, they're one of the ones I was mentioning that the home survived. And you can see the burn lines. What's really crazy is you will see the lines of where they did the property and the house to. And everything burned up to that spot and stopped.
And the product is made from orange peels?
It's orange peel, it's both federally and state approved.
Wow.
And a lot of times houses can be, most houses are, I'm not a spokesperson for, I'm just talking about.
Yeah.
But what's incredible is an example of the fire hardening or mitigation plan. It can be a couple $1,000s a year for treatments, which sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, if you have a larger home, that's an incredible way of defending your house and making sure you don't burn. There are services out there right now that we work with that are fully into defense. We have communities now that are hiring these defense companies just to defend HOAs in communities. So it just becomes a bigger and bigger part of it. So. And
I also remember one of a couple that is rebuilding from the Woolsey fire. There was an article about them, and they chose to rebuild with concrete blocks and then pour concrete in. And my thought process was this: I've traveled to other countries, and there's a lot of countries that build concrete blocks, and that's great for hurricanes, high winds. But we live in earthquake zones.
Just going to say that. So it's an overcorrection.
Yeah.
It's an overcorrection. So the problem I have with that is when people talk about the new creative ways, it's an overcorrection. So you get into this, okay, we're going to build with cement. Okay, there's cement tilt-ups. Well, great. What happens when earthquake happens and you have structural beams inside and they twist? You're tearing the building down. So you're trading one in for another. Is what you're really doing.
And it's kind of even like when you look at cities on the East Coast that were, New England, bricks. An earthquake, a big one like I don't want to say that we're used to, but like a 5 or a 6. Most of those buildings are crumbling apart.
Yeah, they're coming down. It's even a 4 will take a lot of those down because they're not set up for earthquakes.
And they're older.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to that. I mean, I even think about a lot of basements on the East Coast being out of stone. Like
Yes.
that will shake and crumble, and the house is going to end up on its side. And
It's like a car. It goes off by a couple inches, it's done.
Yeah.
So it gets pretty crazy.
So those are important things: the fire hardening,
Mitigation plan, things of that nature. This is going to be the next generation of insurance as we go forward. So it's going to be that kind of thing where you're going to see carriers getting out in front for a consumer. I speak, to realtors, as you know, all the time, and I'm like, it's being proactive versus reactive. And for those that want to do the bare minimum, they're going to struggle. And being proactive and spending not lots of money, some money, to make sure your house is just not only going to give you peace of mind, but at the same time, when you go to sell your home, it's going to make a big difference in insurance rates and potential, sale price. I think I'd argue.
Well, I mean, look, one of the things that we've seen is, and this is even before the fires, we saw properties, the escrow starting to fall apart over fire insurance. We had someone in my office was sharing that there was a house off Sunset going into the hills. They wanted something ridiculous, like $59,000 a year. And I even had an agent who's been an agent for over 30 years call me about a week ago and said, hey, I was in my office and they were saying that someone got quoted an insurance policy of $329,000 a year. And I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yep.
Like that.
Larger homes are really in trouble.
Doesn't even make sense. Like you're going to be paying for your home, not just on your purchase, not just on your interest, but now through your insurance. Like I can see why people would be like, forget it, I'm not gonna have insurance. Like who can do that?
Yep. And so it gets to be a bigger part of it. That's why we keep bringing programs into reverse. But again, that kind of goes back into what we're doing things up front. We're getting things to change because you have to affect change. We're doing this because if not, you're going to continue to see those rates, for the larger homes specifically, get to be 3%, 4% of the total insurance value. So when you get to a $10 million rebuild, contents and everything of nature, 3% is $300,000.
That's insane.
So just by simply mitigating some of the basic stuff, we have our WOWs program as an example. We're seeing rates at 1 to 1.5%, and that's even in fire zones. So it's a really big difference in rate. So when a consumer can't sell their home, we're noticing a trend that their businesses are falling out. But now they're talking to us because they want to get into our programs because one, our WOWs program is fully transferable, which it's easier for a seller to obviously transfer to a buyer. But two, it helps them sell their home.
So wait a second. So they would switch insurance from their current carrier over to you, to your program, because that policy would carry to when the home sells.
Yep.
That's actually really, really great.
Yep.
Because
and that's for the larger ones. We're doing that now.
Okay. What square footage?
Usually, it's actually more about rebuild and total insurance value. So our minimum rebuild is on that program is $5 million or larger.
Okay.
And $10 million of total insurance or larger. But we have other companies right now that we're representing that are going the same direction. Have an incredible company we signed with them last month that's coming to market. They gave us somewhere between 500 to 1,000 homes. And it was incredible because like one of the ones we're dealing with in Northern California is in Saratoga. I got the phone call from one of your brothers and sisters up in Northern California, and they were having a problem because the best comprehensive rate they could find was in the $120,000 to $130,000 range. And so because this house had really good fire hardening and mitigation and had a mitigation plan, it was in the low 60s. I mean, it was less than half. And so it makes a humongous difference.
I mean, my head just internally explodes when we talk about those numbers. Of course, I have a condo, but I've complained at how much my insurance has gone up over the years, but that's nothing like that.
And what's happening is you're now seeing the single family homes. Cal Fair Plan is doing the same thing now. The rates are going up on a rise. So even the policy of last resorts is, I saw my first $20,000 Cal Fair Plan policy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's starting to rise. So you're starting to see, these are things. So it's just, what are you doing to mitigate? What can we do to reverse the trend and really fix things?
Okay. Something else I want to ask you about, as we said, most people are moving on to the stage of getting architect and builder, but what about those that maybe are still kind of struggling, going back and forth with the insurance company, or like, my insurance company is only willing to give me this, but based on when I sign this policy, I should be able to get more. You had mentioned the other day about just like navigating some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Really what happens is your policy is a contract. I think a lot of times people make out what an insurance policy is much more than what it really is. A contract is a contract. So If you have a contract and your policy says it's $1 million of coverage for your structure, to make numbers easy, it's $1 million. Now, there are companies that have what's called extension replacement costs, so that it's called like for a shock loss. Some companies are 20%, some companies are 50%. But really what it is when you have a contract with an insurance company, that company is responsible to pay the proceeds. It's like any other contract. You handed them money. They're promising in the event these things occur that they would pay you this amount of money. By simplifying it, and I know I'm making it sound very simple, it actually really, when you think about it conceptually, that actually, you need to get them what they need in order to be able to pay. So obviously, having the architectural plans and having the builder bid solves that. There's no issues, there's no questions. It shows this house is $1 million to rebuild. I have $1 million policy. The insurance companies are required to release the funds. It's when people don't have it, or I've seen some pretty bad situations. I make a joke about on a cocktail napkin, right? A contract is written out kind of like, John Smith, I'm gonna build home for John Smith. I mean, I've seen some really basic Word documents. And I'm building home for John Smith, $1 million. Well, insurance company's gonna say, I need a little bit more information. Okay.
What kind of home are you building?
Exactly.
How many floors? How many bedrooms?
Exactly. They want to see everything. So it's just making sure you're properly planned for.
And something else too, I was talking with someone who was really upset about how much they got from their insurance company for the interior contents, right? And they were like, what I got is only gonna buy me a mattress, some sheets, and a couch. Like, I have to completely start over. And it really got me thinking. When I moved back to California after high school, I'll never forget this. I'm 17. I have 2 suitcases packed, all my belongings at the time, and the airlines lost one of them. And it was, of course, the suitcase that had my most expensive items in it. And when I went to collect, if I didn't have a receipt for everything I was claiming, they gave me a fraction of that. And so for the first, I think from the age of 17 to 25, I kept a receipt box. Now, of course, now there's apps and things you can do it, but I was meticulous until one day I was like, this is a pain, and I stopped doing it. I think about that moving forward for someone that's been affected or someone that isn't. Well, maybe we should be looking at how we spend money, what we spend it on, how can we account for it?
Well, one of the great things about online now is, people order things on Amazon all the time.
Oh yeah, that part's easy.
Just
all your Amazon stuff is easy.
But again though, I have yet to have a consumer. I've been in every major fire in 25 years plus. And so what happens is, I have yet to have a consumer not zero out their personal property coverage. Personal property is, again, this is the jacket I own. So people think of it as big items, couches. By the way, it's all those things. But I mean,
the big things are easier to remember.
Yeah, it's easier.
It's the little things.
Do you have another pair of shoes? Right. Do you have a pillow to put your head on? Do you have sheets? Do you have beds? Do you have a fork? Do you have a plate? All these things. I have yet, so a lot of times what I've always seen in my experience, a lot of consumers go, well, Robert, I've got a $2 million rebuild policy and they're giving me 40%, which is $800,000, and I don't need $800,000 in coverage. Can we lower this? And my response every time to a T is, you want higher, not lower. Insurance companies cap it. So they won't let you go higher, they'll let you, but lots of times they'll let you lower it. And that's a major problem because, again, especially if you're anywhere near a fire, it doesn't even have to be a fire zone. You can have a kitchen fire that takes your house out. If you have that situation, it's not even a penny on thousands of dollars, the savings per year. And so when you get into that mode, it makes a really big difference. It just does.
It does, and it even makes me think, I currently rent out my condo, and when I was going over my renter's insurance, I was, again, because the cost had gone up so much, I was like, I don't need this, I don't need that. But after these fires, I'm like, I think I need to have a reevaluation of my policy and make sure that it's truly protected. Because again, you have a tenant in there, they have kids. What if something happens? What if
liability is a big issue? All kinds of things. And I hate to say it, it's almost the analogy of almost like when someone, God forbid, has a medical issue. It's a good friend. Every friend then runs to the doctor, making sure they don't have the same medical condition. A fire is the same thing. When fire happens, a lot of consumers, we got phone calls from every part of California asking us questions, which is a great thing, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, so obviously, anytime we have a fire or a fire that's so close and affects such a massive amount of people, it does make all of us at least think about it a little bit and say, am I covered? Am I doing enough? What about my home?
Yep.
And that is something that
it should be done. It should be done regularly. I mean, again, consumers, as a consumer, you are entering a contract. So, not knowing what your contract says, obviously you have trusted advisors. Insurance brokers are really important to be able to be a trusted advisor, whether you use a broker or go direct. It's always good to have an advisor of some type to talk about. But bottom line is it's always the consumer's decision. And so where the coverages are, what amounts of coverage, that's the things that we really talk about. And I talk to consumer groups and everything alike, just really trying to get the word out, because we still see a lot of bad information out there, and we're constantly stomping it out. Trying to.
And I think that's hard too, because when you're making financial decisions that are both about
budgets.
protecting your home, but also being in your budget,
Yep.
we really enter into insurance of every kind, not expecting the worst. We have our dental insurance,
Yep.
we have our health insurance, we have our car insurance, we have our homeowners insurance. I feel like there's something on pet insurance. We enter into these things hoping for the best, but expecting them to be there when we need them.
Exactly. And there's no take all. So there's no policy that says that, it's like, insuring a house. There's no policy that says, just pay me this amount of money, it doesn't matter what the coverage amount is, because we're going to cover it. There's no such thing. So it's all about, insurance is based on the contract. It's, if this happens, I receive the following benefits, just like any other contract. Yeah.
Is any other tips or little things you've seen over the last month and a half?
Really, just getting out in front of it. There's going to be there's a lot of companies that are still pulling back across California in the non-fire related areas. Just making sure you get out in front. Again, there's a wide range of pricing right now. Making sure you prepare your house, as we talked about, getting ready for it. It's the difference. Yeah. We have one carrier that we write. It's called American Western. They're a spectacular company. We're a wholesaler for. They will do it after the fact, which I'm not a huge fan of. But what they'll do is you'll have a inspection, and they'll say, okay, your vents under your attic need to be closed to 1/8 inch. Well, my argument, the same price, do it 16th inch. It's even smaller. So these are things that are not a question of if, it's a question of when you're going to need to do so. So it's a great thing about owning a house and a terrible thing at the same time is the maintenance.
And so again, my brain goes back to the company that you said uses orange peel. How cost efficient is that? Like, how much does someone have to budget for their home to do that every year? And of course, it's about the size, right?
It's about the size. Everyone is things we help a lot of consumers get there, because again, it's not us. We just put it, consumers let them get access to it. And it's really more about, again, what level of mitigation, what kind of a mitigation plan do you want? So it's for people being proactive. And so, there are, one of the companies we use have all the way to the credentials for firefighters to stand on property. Okay, so it's pretty crazy how it's expensive, and so it's again, it just depends. That's why different communities, different things are doing things. I've seen not even HOAs, but neighbors coming to me saying, "Hey, look, can we hire this service to come out once a year? And we've all 10 of us on the street want this, and we're going to hire them to do it, and then annually have them also come to defend, if God forbid." There's all kinds of different processes and things. It just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, there's actually a product, Fireboss, and they're approaching a lot of the gated communities that are, surrounded by canyons and demonstrating their product, but they're really talking to the HOAs like, hey, this is something you guys need for your community as well. And of course, things like people having pumps for their pool to run their own hoses and some of those extras. But I really, personally, I like the idea of spraying the home with something that's non-toxic, but also
keeps it from burning.
Yeah.
It's really true.
Well, I thank you, Robert.
Oh, thank you.
You're always great. Every time you come into our office, I'm always taking copious notes.
You're my note taker. It's a good thing. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, so I want to share as much information as I can, and that's why we came together today. So for all of you out there, if you were not living in an area affected by the fires, really take heed to some of the things he said, especially about fire hardening, making sure that's a part of your annual maintenance. Just like we have to get our oil changed on our car, our brakes and our tires, there's things we need to take care of with our house. And this is definitely one of them. And for those that were affected by the Eaton fires and the Palisades fires, as I've said repeatedly, my heart goes out to you, and I've talked to people in both situations. But if you are at that point, you're like, well, who do I turn to? What builders are there? You can reach out to me, you can reach out to Robert. There's at least a couple we can kind of guide you to, and then go from there.
My email, just in case, real simple, I always put out there is robert@wows, WOWS insurance.com. You can go to wowsinsurance.com and see all the things we're talking about. And I'm always lucky to partner up with some great realtors such as you are. So thank you.
Yeah, and of course I have Robert's contact information below.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back again next time.
Thank you.